This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
This is a real good story about Bronx and his dad, Ryan, real United Airlines customers.
We were returning home, and one of the flight attendants asked Bronx if he wanted to see the flight deck and meet Captain Andrew.
I got to sit in the driver's seat.
I grew up in an aviation family, and seeing Bronx kind of reminded me of myself when I was that age.
That's Andrew, a real United pilot.
These small interactions can shape a kid's future.
It felt like I was the captain.
Allowing my son to see the flight deck will stick with us forever.
That's how good leads the way.
Atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Northern Kentucky University political scientist Michael Baranowski. I am joined today once again by not one, but two conservative counterparts, Cincinnati area attorney Joey Ashbrook and University of Austin economist and former congressional staffer Tim Kaine. Joey and Tim, good to have you guys back for the bonus show. So as usual, there was far more to talk about than we had time for on your regular show. So there's, of course, more than a little bit spillover. And I thought we would start with something that I think is potentially a really big deal, the possibility of peace in Gaza.
Yes, Mike. I think maybe not since the time of Solomon has the region potentially been on the precipice of a period of peace, as is potentially going to happen through the path laid out by the president in the recently released 20-point peace plan for Gaza. Some of the particulars of which include Hamas being gone, the hostages being returned, economic development, peace and prosperity, governed by a committee and overseen by a board of peace to involve the President of the United States and none other than Tony Blair. Gentlemen, interested in your thoughts about whether this is a good idea, whether it's workable, if you see it actually coming to fruition. But the president did get Bibi Netanyahu to agree to it, and as recently as just yesterday, Hamas signaled that they would release the hostages, although has not yet agreed to the plan in full. So do you think we are on the precipice of the next age of Solomon, or is this going to drag out and continue in violence?
Well, I got to say, if we can pull this off, I think it would be absolutely legitimate to put President Trump up for the Nobel Peace Prize. Words I never thought would come out of my mouth, but not for I got to say, not for this year's Nobel Peace Prize, because the voting is pretty much ended for that sort of thing. In fact, I think they're going to be announcing the person in a couple of weeks. I think I'm going to say October 10th or something. But if this actually plays out, and I am highly skeptical because this has been like what with the Charlie Brown and the football, right? And Lucy, I mean, for generations now, we've had almost peace deals involving all sorts of things in the Middle East. But if, 6 months from now, it turns out that Hamas is giving up its weapons and there's a Palestinian Authority that's governing things reasonably well, and we're starting to see some redevelopment, I will give Donald Trump all the credit in the world for that. And I'd nominate him myself, maybe. I don't
maybe
know.
they'll change
Where do
the
I
name
send
to
that
the Trump,
in? I hope.
Maybe they'll change the name to the Trump Peace Prize.
There you go.
I can imagine the Nobel Committee saying, we're going to give the Peace Prize to everybody on Earth except one guy, and that's Donald Trump. So the rest of you, congratulations. I think I wouldn't put it past Donald Trump to pull this off, but I do want to get a little bit more serious that I'm still scarred by the fact that there was this horrific attack on October 7th, 2023. We're coming up on that anniversary, dark anniversary. And yet it was in the news recently that there's still not a war crimes report that's come out of this, I think from Amnesty International, that it's been, they put out reports now on the Palestinian genocide since then, but they still can't seem to have gotten all the drafts approved. And they're afraid that there's been some leaking from inside the organization that anything that says October 7th was in any way bad strengthens the Israelis. So I think I've been shocked as a Catholic kid. When I was young, I didn't know that there were still Jews in the world, because I thought, like, you read the Bible about these tribes that were around thousands of years ago, the Sumerians and the Hittites, and it's like, well, that was then, this is now. This is the most repressed group ever, and I've sort of been shocked to see the anti-Semitism as I've matured and realized, of course, now I've got deep, deep friends who are Jewish, right and left, and the hostility. Just recently, there's a terror attack in Britain on a synagogue. There's so few Jews in Britain. There are fewer Jews there proportionally than there are Druze here in the United States, Sikhs in the United States. Imagine if people were going after Sikhs here. It's like the hostility, the recognition of the Palestinian state that the U.S. is against by many countries. I find myself being very pro-Israel. And whether this peace plan is going to work, I think it comes down to, do you really trust what are called now the Palestinians or Hamas? And I just don't. I'm very frustrated by it. I don't follow it on a daily basis. I think that the Israelis have been completely justified in waging this war. And I really liked what I heard the president say. I'll leave my comments at this. He's like, if the Palestinians don't sign on to this, then the Israelis have my complete support to do whatever the heck they want, right? And I think that's probably the right attitude. This war could end tomorrow if they would release the hostages. It baffles my mind that this country, the Palestinians, with support of some UN agencies, invaded. They took innocent people in small villages, raped, killed, and then took a bunch of hostages, and they've still got them. Like, to me, the whole story starts and ends with the fact there are hostages being held by a terrorist regime.
Joey?
Sorry for that.
Yeah,
I was
I agree.
long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I think what I'm curious about too, Tim, curious about your take, the economics of it, is that I don't see as a purely practical matter, it is logical to me that area could turn around to an era of peace and prosperity if the Palestinian people become more invested in economic development than they are in fighting Israel.
Right.
Can they embrace the Middle Eastern influences of the places like the better angels of the Saudi regime or the Qatars of the world, the United Arab Emirates, the economic development dynamic as opposed to the Iranian impulses, which are themselves complicated because the Persian Empire was one of the great empires of light and learning in the world when it controlled almost half of the known world. Can they, with President Trump, with his being unorthodox in every way, makes me at least logically hopeful that it is possible that there is a path to do something different because he's not bound by the strictures and lines of demarcation that have dominated foreign policy in this specific area for generations. And that at least leaves me cautiously hopeful. Do you think that the economic development carrot, which would involve other nations in the Middle East and wouldn't be necessarily first and foremost driven by the United States, although the United States would essentially be driving it, do you think that's a potential path to getting a different outcome in a different paradigm?
Well, I think I'm at least aware, as ignorant as I am about this, that there is a schism now between, say, the Sunni and the Shias in the Islamic world. So you mentioned that the Iranians they're really committed to making Israel everyone's enemy because they're their enemy. And the Saudis finally have a schism where they realize that Iran's a threat to them. Mm-hmm. So I think the Saudis may be the key to all of this. And if they want this peace plan to go forward, they can exert their pressure within the Palestinians. But honestly, this is dark humor, but who's left to negotiate on the side of Hamas who could say, yep, we agree to it? Like, I wouldn't even want to be that guy that says they agree or disagree, because then you got a target on you. So let me just say, Mike, do you think there can be any peace plan before the hostage release, or will it come as part of the hostage release?
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. you don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
Netflix has a new, monstrous story to tell. In 1950s Wisconsin, Ed Gein lived quietly on a decaying farm, hiding a house of horrors so gruesome it would redefine the American nightmare. Driven by isolation, psychosis, and an all-consuming obsession with his mother, he committed crimes that would haunt Hollywood for decades. The third and most harrowing installment of Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan's anthology series. Watch Monster, the Ed Gein story, streaming now only on Netflix.
Yeah, I think the hostages have to be released right off. And it seems like Hamas, I'm with you on the Hamas thing too, because I don't know who's left exactly, but pretty clearly they're not in good shape. And that's why I think, Joey, the point you made about Donald Trump being very different, he clearly staked out a very different approach to the whole Middle East process than really any previous president in my lifetime.
Abraham Accords, nod to Mike Pompeo and his team in the first Trump administration that got the Abraham Accords done.
Yeah, and so, I mean, if that works, while I am anti-Trump, I am more pro whatever works. And so if that ends up working, well, then great. And because clearly what we've been trying for generations has not worked at all, though I think that in the end, we won't see any real development in Gaza. And the reason why is I think we know how nation building works and how it doesn't work. And when you go into a place that has no institutions, no real rule of law, and just horrific corruption, you can throw billions of dollars at it, and it's just like throwing it into a black hole. And so that's why I'd like to think we had learned our lesson. You remember George W. Bush was famously against nation building before he was for it, right, with Iraq. And I just don't think that works, because if you don't have that foundation, it's just not going to be the sort of thing we want to see. And as long as the economy is just so devastated, unemployment in Gaza is ridiculous, right? People don't have lives, don't have hope, don't have anything. We're not going to see this situation, I think, quickly and easily resolved. Gaza's going to be a mess for a long, long time to come, sadly, I think.
Yeah, I think the real hope is, and I think the president's smart. Well, the 20-point peace plan, and release of the hostages was 100% absolutely non-negotiable. That's an integral part of it. But that it's intelligently set up wisely, where you can write the story of the success of the Gaza turnaround as a victory for Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt, and the other nations of the region that are not the Shiite Iranian. Within the Shiite Iranian side, that it's really their success story. And I think that's very wise, because it's not set up to be America, the great white hope America, going to help you solve your problems. And I think Trump, he's a strong personality and sometimes is criticized as being pompous and arrogant. He's a strong personality. He has some real laces of humble wisdom and how he deals with people. And I think his impulses, even for people that are historically not our allies, are, if you treat them with you have to understand human nature in a way that allows, you don't deny everybody else's dignity, even if you're the top dog. And I think that I think it's wisely crafted. And I think proof will be in the pudding, but it's got a real chance of success. I don't know how.
Good.
I don't know how, from an Israeli standpoint, I think I take Tim's point too, is really important. Israel has a right to defend itself, and that's a non-negotiable dynamic too. And at some point, when you don't trust what's going on around you, how is it a strategic mistake to leave operational space for yourself to have the same problem again? And that's important. But in the plan the president had, I think that he's able to convince, because one of the points is maybe able to convince Netanyahu, because a couple of the points are Hamas is gone. It's going to be demilitarized. The weapons are going to be they're going to be out of there. There's going to be a police force that's trained by the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians. And then there's going to be, the tunnels are going to be blown up and not rebuilt. And I think that if there's some of those structural developments from Hamas, including the tunnels, are themselves, if there's a way to monitor and prevent that from being rebuilt, it probably puts the Israeli security situation itself as improved, that it's still even if you don't still trust certain actors operating in Palestine, it still improves your security situation.
Yeah. I think there's a concern that, to me at least, that I think Hamas, I'd be surprised if Hamas completely disarmed. I think they'll make a show of doing some disarming, but going to try to keep as much as they possibly can, try to skirt that as much as they possibly can, because I don't think that they believe that Netanyahu's going to keep to the agreement. I think they're going to say, well, they're going to be thinking, well, once we give up our hostages, which is our last leverage, really, then, well, Netanyahu's just going to find some pretext, even make up some pretext to go back in. We won't have any leverage. We'll have given up already some of our arms. Well, we better have something. And we know that we can't necessarily trust them even under U.S. pressure, because look at with the when they went after the Hamas leadership in Doha last month. I mean, it's not like they consulted with the U.S. I get the sense that Trump is kind of with Netanyahu, sort of like he is, not to the same extent, but with Putin, where he's like, well, I had talked with the guy and we have good conversations. Then he goes and does this stuff. And I'm really upset with him. And why is he doing this stuff? But I think in the end, unlike with Putin, maybe, Trump will always end up on Netanyahu's side. And I think that's what's going to make Hamas more reluctant to, I mean, I think publicly they're going to say, sure, we'll do this. And they seem to be doing that. But I think in terms of monitoring actual compliance, I don't think anyone trusts anyone in this situation. And for good reason. I think there are plenty of untrustworthy actors to go around here. I think this is going to all fall apart like almost all of these things have. I hope I'm wrong. Yeah. Nothing would please me more. God, it gag me to say this, but nothing would please me more to a year from now saying, yeah, Donald Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize for the amazing job that he did in Gaza.
Which is why I think the economic development piece is so important, because that gives a unifying target and objective of lots of actors and stakeholders with skin in the game to prevent people who don't trust each other, and maybe the Israelis, I don't think, certainly should not be trusting the Hamas folks. They're going to you need to change the paradigm of it's Israel versus Hamas. And it's now all of a sudden the Saudis, the Jordanians, and the Egyptians versus Hamas who are going to say, hey, stop, don't screw up our economic development dynamic that we've got going on here. I think that's the only real chance for sustainable peace.
We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters-exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo or @politicsguys, or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,